Hello again, everyone. I'm still Esther, and I'm still a key leader. So that's all good. So over the last 4 weeks, the last 4 Sundays, we've been getting stuck into a very specific part of the Bible. We've been reading Matthew chapters 8 and 9, and we've seen Jesus putting the words of his Sermon on the Mount, which are in the previous 3 chapters, into action. One thing Jesus can never be accused of is being all talk. So just a little recap so far. Jesus has touched and healed a man with leprosy, a Roman centurion servant at a distance with his words, Peter's mother-in-law, and a whole load of other people described by Matthew as many. Jesus has bluntly challenged people on what they are prepared to do and give up to follow him. He's woken up from a nap to calm a storm. Jesus has also restored 2 men to full health, which led to a whole town begging Jesus to get out and leave. Interesting response. We then read about Jesus forgiving the sins of a paralyzed man, which caused more chaos than the guy getting up and walking. Matthew tells us a bit of his own story of his Jesus invitation to throw out everything he thought he knew for a totally radical, all-in, brand new way to live, to literally follow Jesus. So something new has been brewing, and now in these 2 chapters, we're seeing it break the surface, smack us around the face in a way that is impossible to ignore. Like, this is Jesus. This is what Jesus is all about. And the Jesus that we read about in the Bible is exactly the same today. So this is the last week of our series, The Jesus Way, What Happens Next? And this is the big question that we get to wrestle with individually and all together. So for me, for you, with all this stuff we're hearing Jesus say, all the things that we're seeing Jesus do, what happens next? Today, specifically, we're going to have a think around Jesus and faith, and we're going to use some more healing stories that Matthew tells us about in the Bible. But before we read these stories, let's have a quick think about the word faith. How do you feel about it? Like, are you immediately judging your own current faith levels? Are you bracing yourself to feel guilty and inadequate? Or are you quietly confident? Or something else entirely? Here are 2 definitions of the word faith. One from the Bible, one from a dictionary. So this is Hebrews 11, verse 1. This is in the Bible. It says, to have faith is to be sure of the things we hope for and certain of the things we cannot see. Dictionary definition, faith is complete trust or confidence in someone or something. There's not a lot of margin for error, is there? Like, both of those definitions feel a little bit daunting, and for me, it's really easy to count myself out right from the start. Like, I can see this in other people, but do you know what? Maybe this kind of faith, it just isn't for me. It's for the heroes that we read about in the Bible, or those special Christians who we get told about, like George Muller and Mother Teresa. Yet, today we're going to read stories of Jesus, real lives, and real imperfect faith. So we're going to read from Matthew chapter 9. It's verses 18 to 31. This is from the New Testament part of the Bible. Follow along as I read. It will be on the wall behind me. We've got Bibles right at the back. Just help yourself to one of those. So this is Matthew chapter 9, starting at verse 18. While he was saying this, that's Jesus, a synagogue leader came and knelt before him and said, "My daughter has just died, but come and put your hand on her, and she will live." Jesus got up and went with him, and so did his disciples. Just then, a woman who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak. She said to herself, "If only I touch his cloak, I will be healed." Jesus turned and saw her. "Take heart, daughter," he said. "Your faith has healed you." And the woman was healed in that moment. When Jesus entered the synagogue leader's house and saw the noisy crowd and the people playing pipes, he said, "Go away. The girl is not dead, but asleep." But they laughed at him. After the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took the girl by the hand, and she got up. News of this spread through all that region. As Jesus went on from there, 2 blind men followed him, calling out, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." When he had gone indoors, the blind man came to him and he asked them, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" "Yes, Lord," they replied. So he touched their eyes and said, "According to your faith, let it be done to you." And their sight was restored. Jesus warned them sternly, "See that no one knows about this." But they went out and spread the news about him all over that region. So as we look at these verses today, 3 headings. Faith is messy. Jesus is a person and Jesus is God. And the third one, what happens next? So faith is messy. I love that in these 3 stories where people come face to face with Jesus, we get a proper, honest insight into the reality and messiness of what faith and real life looks like. And just to say, I don't think messy is a bad thing when it comes to faith anyway. When it comes to office space, this building, the house I live in. Different story. But anyway, faith can be messy. Let's start with the synagogue leader. And we don't know a lot of detail about his background or specifically what he thought about Jesus. But safe to say, he would have heard about Jesus, about the disruption, the questions and claims flying around. And maybe this guy, maybe he was even a part of the conversations, the solutions being suggested on how to stop Jesus for good. But his daughter has died. He is a dad beside himself. He's got nowhere to turn. He's desperate. And so maybe he remembers the gossip, the furious mutterings about this Jesus and what he's been doing. And there's just a flicker of something, like too small maybe to be called faith, but something. So he throws his reputation to one side and takes a chance on Jesus. He kneels, which is unheard of for a man with his status, and gasping for breath, full of snotty, ugly tears, says, "My daughter has just died. But come and put your hand on her and she will live." This guy's like, "Let's be real, Jesus. She's gone. I don't know who you are or what's going on here." But we see a desperate faith, but with the but. And then we meet the bleeding woman. This is definitely a last resort situation. And we know from other accounts of her story in Mark 5 and Luke 8 that she has spent a load of money, tried a load of different questionable doctors, only for her condition to get worse. And so maybe from her forced isolation, she's heard the whispers about Jesus healing people. Maybe she's heard superstitions about needing to touch the clothes of someone with this kind of power. But either way, she's at a point where she feels like she's got nothing to lose. Because this woman does the most culturally dangerous thing possible for someone with her condition at this time. Like, she pushes through the crowds, making everyone she touches unclean just to get to Jesus. She has a last resort and a dangerous faith. And now we have the 2 blind men following after Jesus and shouting loudly. I like these guys. I like that they know enough to get up and try to physically follow Jesus, but they're not 100% sure about this. Like, will that cut it? So they just keep shouting at him until they have his attention. And then Jesus asks them a question. Do you believe that I'm able to do this? If I put myself in that situation, I think I might have some follow-up questions. Like, okay, can we be clear, Jesus? What do you mean by this? Because it's really important we're on the same page here. And then maybe I'd remember my mate with me, and I'd want to check with Jesus, are you asking just one of us or both of us? Is this a 2-for-1 kind of thing? And I'd probably ask Jesus, do you know what? Could you just wait 1 second? We're going to have a chat and just check before we answer. But not these guys. Do you believe that I'm able to do this? 2 simple words. Yes, Lord. These guys have a shouty and simple faith. And when I think about my life, it's never headed down one straight, flat, immovable line or path. So why should I expect faith to be like that? Like, the stuff of life is messy, and so my faith is also messy. Sometimes, that is probably generous, but sometimes they run alongside each other in perfect sync. Most of the time, not so much. And the important thing is not the measure or size of our faith. It's where our faith takes us. For everyone in these stories, it was their messy, imperfect faith that brought them into contact with Jesus. And that's the most important thing. Because when you meet Jesus, however you get there, that's when the good stuff can happen. So, second thing for today, Jesus is a person and Jesus is God. I love that we get to see what God looks and sounds like in the person of Jesus, like in a human body that we can more easily relate to and identify with. And we're not going to get all deep into this as a concept, but I think holding both of these parts of Jesus, being a person and God, is really helpful and important as we explore these stories and think about how we might put them alongside our own lives today. So as we've read, the main characters in our story have faith. It's a faith that isn't necessarily theologically sound or unquestionably strong, but it's a kind of faith that gets them face to face with Jesus. So how does Jesus, the person and God, respond to each of these people? So the synagogue leader is on his knees before Jesus. And we read in verse 19, Jesus got up and went with him. I wonder if, as this man knelt before Jesus, that Jesus also got down to the same level. And maybe that was simply so he could hear him. Maybe it was a show of empathy, maybe to help this respected leader feel a little less self-conscious. Or maybe Jesus was already sat down, chatting and teaching, doing his thing, when this leader suddenly interrupted. Either way, Jesus stops what he's doing. He listens, and no questions asked. Jesus gets up and he goes with him. And the bleeding woman is forcing her way through the crowds just to get a sneaky touch of Jesus' coat. And this is verse 22. Jesus turned and saw her. Jesus is on his way to the synagogue leader's house. He's got a job to do, a grieving dad to keep up with, yet Jesus stops and he sees her. Like, this is life-changing for her, and it's easy for us to skim past, I think. Like, this woman has been sick and very literally isolated from her community for 12 years. Like, no one has seen her, had any physical contact with her for 12 years. And the only people who have done so to make money off her and make her condition worse. But Jesus looks her in the eye and sees her, like properly sees her. And then in verses 25 and 29, Jesus physically touches a dead body and some blind eyes. It says he went in and took the girl by the hand. Verse 29, then he touched their eyes. Touching a dead body, it was not a good thing. And doing so would make Jesus unclean and needing to go through a whole lot of religious cleansing protocol. And the shouty blind men, they just weren't that important. They were used to being walked past and ignored, listened to and touched. Like this was something new, to put it mildly. Like they were used to being walked past and ignored. Like this is Jesus. Jesus is something new, and he's exactly the same today. And I think we see the person Jesus here, and we see a humanity that we can identify with. We see his compassion, his care, his love for all kinds of people, and we like this. This is nice Jesus. Maybe even safe Jesus. This is the Jesus that we want to come face to face with. We want to experience this compassion, love and care. And we might even want to tell other people about this Jesus. Jesus is, of course, all these things. Amazingly, unconditionally, and excessively in love with all kinds of people and with every single one of us. At the same time, though, let's not lose sight of the radical, countercultural, offensive, God's kingdom bringing side of Jesus' humanity. Everything that he does and says here, it's risky. It makes people uncomfortable. And it's got to be a huge challenge to us and how we live, who we spend time with, and what we chase after in life. That's not actually my point, though. My point is that Jesus is also God. So as well as all this good stuff that we can relate to and get on board with, we have miracles. The dead girl is alive. The bleeding woman is healed. The blind men can see. Messy faith in Jesus' hands equals miracles. And I want to encourage us, let's not get too comfortable or familiar with these Jesus encounters and stories that we read in the Bible, because Jesus isn't done. This isn't just for the history books. This is for now. So, what happens next? In these stories, for the people who met Jesus and whose lives have been radically changed, what happens next? We might assume that the men who are blind went on a speaking tour of the region, shouting at anyone who stopped still for long enough about Jesus and what he'd done for them. Maybe the previously bleeding woman turned into a fighter for Jesus-shaped justice, becoming a voice for those on the margins in her society. The synagogue leader and his daughter, maybe they became nuisances, questioning the rules put on Jewish people, pointing others to the freedom-bringing, life-giving Jesus way. We don't know what happens next, though. Anything is possible in all kinds of ways because Jesus always gives us the freedom to choose. It's possible to be close to Jesus, to be in that crowd, to see his compassion and his miracles right up close. It's possible to see that, to be there and remain unchanged. Jesus gives us infinite opportunities to get up close and personal with him, for us to experience the miraculous breaking in of God's kingdom in our lives today. All of this, All of what we've read today and more without conditions. Like without conditions. Like this, it's one of those things that is huge, it's amazing, it's tricky, and it's also painful. Like Jesus doesn't say to the synagogue leader, to the bleeding woman, to the blind men, I will do what you ask. I will heal you, but only if you promise to sort yourself out, give up everything and follow me closely forever and ever. Like, do you see how much Jesus is putting himself out there for these people? Risking rejection. For me and for you as well. Like with open hands, Jesus is like, all of this, it's yours. And we get to choose. And Tyler Staton says in his book, The Familiar Stranger, he says, Jesus commissioned his followers with the very presence and power that they'd seen in him. Not as a comforting theory or a poetic metaphor, but in actual practice. So Jesus commissioned his followers, that's us, with the very presence and power that they'd seen in him. So everything that we've just read this morning. And this is not a comforting theory or a poetic metaphor. This is actual, real life, here and now. So, this is the question. What happens next? What happens next for us today? Like, we get to respond to Jesus and his invitation. And there could be 1,000,001 different ways to respond. I'm just going to suggest a few, and maybe there is do you know what? I'm not sure about this Jesus. Like, I don't know, do I get him? I'm not sure. But maybe today you want to say yes. Do you know what? I'll find out some more. Tell me some more about this guy Jesus that you've been talking about. And maybe there's a saying yes to believing that God's kingdom stuff here on earth, that is possible. And I feel like that might be quite a huge step, that the stuff that we read about, that we see Jesus doing, that he talks about, that is possible here, right now. And maybe it's saying yes to working out what Jesus, all this is. So when Jesus has open hands and is stood in front of you personally saying, all this, Esther, like, this is for you. Like, take it. Like, what does that mean for you? What does that mean for us today? And maybe it's saying yes to Jesus and his presence and his power. Like, if you're a follower of Jesus, if we have been commissioned by Jesus with his presence and power through the Holy Spirit to go be him, do his stuff, like, that's bonkers, let's face it. And you might have a load of follow-up questions, but sometimes it's like being those blind men. And like, I've got a load of questions, but I'm going to say yes. Like, yes, Lord. So, yeah, what happens next? It's up to us. I'm gonna pray.